Makeba,
Hey, hey, how are
how's it?
you?
Good. My bad for the fact we're running a little late. Latif was he was going
Oh,
he
no
was going on
problem.
about
I
his
love
story.
Latif. I love Latif.
Absolutely.
He's so dope. What's
Absolutely.
up? What's up?
Not much. He just wanted to say hi, but we wanted to first off thank you for taking the time out for this. Like I told everyone earlier, you have so much history, so many hits, and we got to go through those hits and even some of those album cuts that you've done.
Yeah. Let's do it. I'm excited.
Absolutely. So I was trying to figure out, did we want to talk about the hits or did we want to talk about Devontae Swing and Kenny Green? Because I know you love those two.
Wow. Well, Devontae and Kenny G Love Green are two of my musical idols. They are
Wow.
the ones that inspired me to want to be a songwriter, to want to produce, to want to arrange. So, those guys will always go down in my book as some of the greatest, and they paved the way for me.
Yeah. Like I'll go back and listen to a Jodeci album, Diary of a Madman,
Yeah.
and it's just crazy to think that that came out at that time and you can still play it today.
Yes,
Yeah.
timeless classics. I love anybody who knows me knows that I love Jodeci. I love Kenny G Love Green and intro. I mean, wow.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
classic right there.
That's classic. But we got to talk about some of your classics. I want to first off, because I'm just going through your history here. Of course, a lot of people know or may not know that you wrote the Jennifer Lopez record, All I Have, which is
Hmm.
a classic to today. But
Yeah.
just take me through the early beginnings and how you got that record placed.
Well, that was at the beginning of my career. I was just writing around New York and just writing with a lot of different producers and just trying to get placements on different artists. I had been writing for B2K and I had been writing for 3LW, and they were all signed to Epic at that time. And
Mm,
Max Goose was the executive of A&R at Epic, and he heard my demo CD and he was like, "Yo, you're dope. I would love to work with you, and we need this single for Jennifer Lopez. I bet you can't write me a single for Jennifer Lopez." And we all laughed about it. And a friend of mine and I, Curtis Richardson, were just playing around in a studio in Brooklyn one day. We had this track from Ron G, who was a DJ, a poppin' DJ in New York at the time. And we wrote this record playing around, and it got to the hands of Corey Rooney because I sent it to Max Goose. Corey Rooney was Jennifer's main vocal producer at the time. And he loved the record. And he called me like, "Yo, Jennifer wants to cut this record. I need you down at the Hit Factory Studios in New York on 53rd Street." And I just couldn't believe it because I'm like, wow, Jennifer Lopez might cut my record. This is huge. And she wound up cutting it. I didn't know when she cut it. I just wound up hearing the record on the radio. And that was my
wow.
first single to ever come out to radio. And it did what it did. It went number one all over the world.
Yep.
So big, huge record for my career.
Yeah. I mean, I love that story that you just told and some of those records that you wrote on Epic. I just remember one song. I'm going to bring this up. I don't know if anyone's brought this up to you in a while, but the song that you and Adonis did for Orion, Omarion's brother,
Oh
Take It
yeah,
Slow.
yes.
That song is crazy.
Yeah. We did that, I believe. Okay, I'm trying to think. Around that time, we were working on the soundtrack for a movie called You Got Served.
Yeah.
And so we were working with Omarion, and Orion came in the studio and heard the record, and he wanted to cut it. So it's funny in my career that I've worked with siblings like that. I think you brought that back up to me. I worked with Omari and Orion. I worked
Yeah.
with Beyonce and Solange. I worked
Yeah.
with Tony and Tamar.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, take me through your grind after that Jennifer Lopez record comes out. That's a number one hit, obviously.
Mhm.
Did the doors open up immediately, or did you still have to put in the work at that time?
The Doors did not. The Doors did
Hmm.
not. Even though I had a number one record, it was still grind time. It was
Yeah.
still time for me to grind and use that to meet more producers and travel. And I did start traveling a lot more after that because I was working with producers internationally. I was going to Sweden, I was going to
Wow.
London, working with producers, but I still had to grind for like another 3, 4 years after that before I got my real big break.
Right. Now, of course, a lot of people know of your work on the Beyonce B-Day album, classic
Hmm.
album, and I think that sort of set the foundation for her. And a lot of people, when they look back at that album, they just love that album. How did you get introduced to that? Because I know that was a camp at that time. Was that through Rodney? Because I know you had done some work with Dark Child at that time too.
Yeah, so we I had been working with Dark Child, but that was like 2 years prior, before the
Right.
B-Day album. We were working on a bunch of different stuff, and Adonis was there at the writing camp. A Plus, Anisha and Antea were there. Um, LaShawn Daniels, God rest his soul, he
Hmm.
was there.
Yeah.
We just had a ball writing for like 3 weeks in
Wow.
Atlantic City, New Jersey, and it wasn't until a good year and a half later that I got the call from Max Goose again, who was at that time working with Matthew Knowles at Music World, that they
Yeah.
found this record that I co-wrote and that Beyonce wanted to cut it. And she wants you to
Right.
come in and finish the record with her. So when I went in to finish that record with her, we just hit it off. You know, the synergy was there. She wanted me to stay and write, help them write the rest of the album. So
Right. Was one of those records that you did with Dark Child early on, was Mr. Dream by Avant one of those, or was that later on?
Mr. Dream, I believe we did do that at that same writers camp. Yeah, we
Okay.
did. We did do
Yeah.
that. Yep. We came up
Yeah.
with some really dope records at that writers camp.
Yeah. I love that song. Just the vibe of that song. It's a crazy record.
Yeah, classic
Yeah.
record.
Yeah. But let's talk about that B-Day album now. It's a writing camp. You're there. I think Sean Garrett's there. Rodney Jerkins is there. A couple other writers are there. Just talk about the synergy, because like writing camps, it's such a special thing where it's a body of work. You guys are there together for a
Mhm.
extended amount of time. Like, just talk about that synergy.
Well, at that time, the writers' camps were not that big. Like now, the last writers' camp I went to, there were probably 1,000 writers there. It
Wow.
was so many people and so many studios. But back
Right.
then, it was condensed. It was about 10 of us in Sony Studios, and we camped out. Rodney and his crew was in one room. Swiss and Sean Garrett was in another room, and then me and Beyonce and Solange and Angie, we were in another room. And it was like friendly competition to see who could come up with the dopest records at the end of the day,
Right.
the end of each day. And we were playing for each other and we would dance, and it was a really amazing time. It was a it,
Right.
it was a wonderful time creating that album.
Right. Kind of take me through your writing process. And I ask this because, you've done some stuff on your own, but you've
I
also
did.
co-written with
Sorry,
some other writers.
somebody just asked me, did I do Sprung on the You Got Served soundtrack with
Oh.
Adonis? Yes, I did. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. What's your
No,
question?
I was gonna say you've written records on your own. You've co-written records with other writers. Like,
Yeah.
what's that process like on both sides?
Earlier in my career, I used to co-write a lot, just because I really didn't have a choice. That would be what the
Mm,
artist would request, or what the A&R would request, or what the producer would request, and it was cool.
yeah.
Writing with people like Adonis and James Fauntleroy. Those were my friends.
Yeah.
Sean Garrett. Those were my friends. So we had such a ball co-writing together. I don't do as much co-writing now. Just
Right.
because, sorry, I think my phone paused, because it's not easy when everybody may not work at the same pace or not have the same ideas. But I did used to do co-write a lot.
Cool. So back to that Beyonce album, the record Deja Vu, I feel like at the time it was like a little ahead of its time just
Yeah.
because it was so musical. But when you listen to it now, like that song is crazy. Just talk about what you remember about that song.
That was the last song that we wrote in the writers camp. We had been there, like I said, for a couple of weeks. Everybody was kind of burnt out, ready to go home. And Rodney was like, "Oh, I just got a call from Janet Jackson's people. They want a record. You gotta stay, Makeba, and co-write one more record with me. You gotta." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm ready to go home. I'm tired. I'm burnt out." He was like, "One more record. Let's do this record for Janet." And so myself, Kelly Nicole Price, Delisha Thomas, and Rodney came up with the Deja Vu record. And we
Right,
sent it to Janet, but it wound up going on Beyonce.
right. That's awesome. And of course, you also did a couple of other records on that project. A lot of live instrumentation. And
Yeah,
you're an artist. You're a songwriter. You can do it. You can do the R&B stuff, but you've also dibbled and dabbled into the pop world. You're very versatile with what you
yeah.
do.
Hmm.
So, is it easier or is it harder when you're working on a project? And sonically everything fits one lane, or do you like dibbling and dabbling into different sounds
For
on an
me,
album?
I mean, I know every songwriter is different, but for me, I love writing in different genres. I've had a
Right.
hit record on the dance charts. I've had a hit record on the pop charts. I've had a hit
Yeah.
record on the R&B charts. I've had a hit record on the gospel charts. So for me, I love writing in different genres. I can't stay locked in one box because, like I said, I've traveled internationally. I love picking up different vibes from different countries and different artists from different territories. So I like to dabble with all of the different genres.
Right. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I just want to highlight two records here that you did. One was the Tony Braxton song "Please."
Mhm.
You did your
Yeah.
thing on that one. And
Yeah. Yeah.
then another one I want to highlight here, and I just want to highlight the bridge. I'm not sure if you're responsible for the bridge, but the bridge on this song is insane. "Let It Rain" by JoJo.
Yeah. I wrote that. Mhm.
That's crazy. That
I
bridge is
did that with
crazy.
Stargate. Yeah, that was early, early, early in my career. Yes.
Yeah,
Thank
crazy.
you.
Yeah. So, of course, you've done a lot of work with Rihanna
Mhm.
as well as Beyonce. Can you just talk about, as the artist is progressing and you're working on multiple albums with them, like what's your approach to making sure that you're catching up with their evolution as an artist?
Um, I just try to follow their lead. Wherever the artist wants to go, then I
Yeah,
try to help them push the needle even further.
yeah,
So I believe that every artist, in order to grow, you have to evolve.
yeah,
And just like you said with Rihanna, because I worked on so many of her albums, every album it was a step up. It was a different evolution of her as an artist.
yeah.
And it was a process. We studied different records, different producers, and it was just really a process of helping her get to that next level.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you remember a time during that period for Rihanna or Beyonce or even Tamar where, the evolution got a little difficult for you as a songwriter? Because, I can't say that one Beyonce album sounds like another Beyonce album.
Yeah.
Like, was there a particular sound that was a challenge for you?
Um, I don't know. I don't think
Yeah.
so. No.
Okay.
I'm always up for a challenge. The
Right.
Please record that you mentioned with Tony Braxton, that was a challenge. That was a
Mm,
Scott Storch track, and it was very hard for me to write to that track. But eventually, I vibed with it for like 8 hours and
wow.
came up with a hit. So for me, I like to be pushed. I like to
Right.
be pushed and try to go to the next level. Yeah.
Right. That's awesome. Now, kind of take me through. You mentioned earlier you have hits on different formats, different
Yeah.
genres. Where
Mhm.
does that come from? We just talked about Devontae and Kenny Green, but what about the
Yeah.
other aspects? Like,
Well,
where
for
does that come
me,
from?
growing up, my father used to listen to Hall and Oates, which is one of my favorite bands. I used to listen to Tears for Fears in the 80s. So I've always listened to, like my grandmother used to listen to Dolly Parton. So I've always listened to different genres of music, and I've always had a love and appreciation for it. And I think that's why I don't pigeonhole myself into just writing R&B, just writing pop, just writing one genre, because
Right.
I love and listen to it all.
Right. So, it's really cool just to see your career. You start out with a number one hit, and then you have to kind of go through that grind period.
Yeah.
At what point do you feel like something clicks and here you are now writing hits? Like, was there a period where something just clicked for you?
Yeah, there was a period where I was on a serious run. I had like
Yeah.
a number one R&B record, a number one pop record, number one dance record, all on the charts at the same time. So there was a period where the momentum was like really going, like you
Yeah.
riding that wave, the momentum, and it just did at that time. It just didn't stop. But of course, over the years, and we go through life changes, and I got married, I had children, I moved
Right.
from the West Coast back to the East Coast, and you go through life. But for me, I was blessed in that I was able to jump into a whole nother genre and have hits on the gospel charts,
Right.
while I was doing different things. There was the time when I was in LA that I was able to jump from the pop charts and have a number one dance record and be on a dance album that was nominated for 5 and 6 Grammys. So going back to what you were saying about being versatile, you have to you have to, number one, know that the momentum is going to change throughout your
Yeah.
career. It's not
Right.
always going to be high. You're not always going to be on a mountaintop like people think. You know, you have hit after hit after hit, but you know, things happen in life and you'll be doing different things and you'll be at a different place in your life. So you have to know how to pace yourself.
Right.
Pace
That's
yourself, you
awesome.
know? Yeah.
Yeah, that's great advice. Now, being that you've had number one hits in different genres, do you think there's a certain aspect or quality that you feel is necessary regardless of genre? Like, is there a secret ingredient to making any genre a hit?
I mean, to me, it's authenticity. And it's always been that for me. Even if I'm writing a song for another artist, it's always authentic to what I was going through in my life. And I feel like we all share the same experiences and the same, you know, same experiences in life. And that's where my records came from. And it always resonated. No matter who I was writing for, no matter what genre the song was in, it always resonated. So I think it's just important to not chase trends, you know, but be authentic.
Yeah, love it. And I just got to touch on your work with Tamar. You've worked with her on
Yeah.
multiple albums. Love and War,
Hmm.
that song, I feel like when we look back at that last decade, that's going to be one of the highlight ballads
Yeah.
from an era for a time period when R&B wasn't popping, wasn't the
Yeah.
biggest genre.
Yes.
But
Yes.
that record, I think, has stood the test of times. I just spoke to Camper last week, and
Yeah.
he was telling me how that song was made. But from your
Yeah.
perspective, how did that song come together?
You know, that's a special song because not only was it was huge, a huge number one record, and it did what it did, but it also established Tamar as an artist.
Yeah,
Because, and you know, you guys have heard her tell the story before. You know, she went through so many different record deals and, you know, trying to find that hit record. And Love and War really became the record that defined her and gave
yeah,
her a sound and let the world know, like, okay, a new superstar is born. You know, and I'll tell you something funny about that. The same day that we wrote Love and War in that same session, we
yeah.
wrote a song called Hot Sugar, which was an up-tempo record off of Tamar's album. And we all thought, like me and LaShawn and Tamar, we all thought Hot Sugar was going to be the record. We thought that was the one that was going to take off at radio and, oh, this is going to be the one that rocks the world. But when they
Right.
researched the record at radio, Love and War researched so strong
Yeah.
because it was so authentic and it was so sincere and it was like written from a real conversation. And that's
Right.
why I talk about authenticity always wins.
Nice. Yeah, that song is amazing. Another one I want to highlight from Tamar, Must Be Good to You. You did that one as well.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah,
great song
yeah,
too.
yes,
Love
yeah,
that. Love the vibe on that one. But
yeah,
as a songwriter, as R&B has evolved, and we're looking at 2020 where R&B songs don't have bridges anymore,
yeah,
songs with 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Like, how do
yeah.
you approach that as a hit songwriter that's seen it and done it? Like, how do you approach writing music today?
You have to evolve. You have to evolve. You know, like you said, songs are shorter. You know, it's very minimal. It's not a whole lot of vocals. You know,
Right.
so you just have to evolve. But the heart of a song, that
Yeah.
hook with that lyric, you know, it has to cut through. It has to penetrate through hearts. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter how long the song is. It doesn't matter how many riffs you sing in. It doesn't matter how much, you know, instrumentation is going on in the production. The meat and the heart of a song, that's what you got to get to. I don't care if you singing one hook over and over and over again for 2 minutes. That's, you
Yeah.
know, that's it.
Right. I mean, I would still love to hear bridges on a record. I miss
Yeah.
those. I feel like, do you feel like, how do I ask this? Do you feel like that's detrimental to the quality of R&B if like a bridge is missing? Because that was such a vital part of music back in the 90s and the 2000s.
Well, I think again, it's about evolving because
Yeah.
these kids now that are listening to SoundCloud and listening to these records that are 2 minutes long, they can't listen past 2 minutes or they on
Right.
to the next, you know,
Yeah.
they on to the next thing. So I don't think that it's detrimental. I just think, you know, music changes over the different eras. It changes and it's up to me
Yeah.
as a songwriter to be able to evolve because
Right.
you know, whether any type of creative, whether you're a songwriter, producer, artist, everybody can't evolve. Everybody,
Mm,
you know, I always say this to people, everybody's not going to be an Aretha Franklin. Everybody's
right.
not going to be a Jay-Z who has historic career over 30 years, everybody's not going to be a baby face, you know,
Right.
because everybody cannot evolve with the times and still make it work. So
Right.
yeah.
That's a good point. So Makeba, we've talked about your past, talked about the hits, talked about the history. What do you have coming up? Who are you working with right now?
You know, for me now, I've been doing this for so long. I've been doing this professionally for 18 years, and it is time for me to do some different things. Still
Mm.
in the creative space, still in the entertainment field, but I am jumping into the world of TV production.
Oh
And of
wow.
course, you know, music will always be a part of me, and I'll be writing songs for that as I have for, you
Yep.
know, shows like Empire and Greenleaf and Star. But I'm writing a TV series. Well, actually, we're in development now, developing a TV series,
Yeah.
casting artists from all over the world. So I'm really, really excited about this chapter. I mean,
Nice.
I always write songs. You know, sometimes I'm going to bed and a song will pop in my head and I got to get up and record a voice note, you know. So I will always write songs, but it's time for me to diversify and do, you know, add more to my plate.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I still want to hear those records that you did with Kiki Martin from ISIS. She hooked us up with
Oh
this interview, so I want to
yes,
hear that
yeah.
stuff.
Well, you know, Kiki and I grew up together. We grew up together. We went to
Wow.
high school together. We lived right down the street from each other, and I recently did a record with her. I mean, that's my baby sister. So
Right.
eventually, we'll release some stuff together.
Awesome. All right. Well, Makeba, we're out of time here, but I want to thank you for taking the time out for this.
Yes,
We
thank you for
definitely wanted to
having me.
highlight your work.
Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. You take care and keep us posted on everything, and we'll definitely support it.
I will. Thank you, guys.